missed it, Tupac has turned into the six-pack. The Pac-12, Oregon State and Washington State will be joined by Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Colorado State. A lot of states. Last I checked, only one of those is an actual state, but they're in the Mountain West. Now they are moving into the Pac-12, if we're going to call it that. Chris, we'll start here. Why take this move if you're the Pac-12? What does this sort of mean for the future of that league, which everybody sort of assumed was going away? I'm just glad the logo is still going to be with us.
Yeah, so I mean, the Pac-2 have been kind of sitting around for the last year figuring out what to do. They're down to 2 members. They have a 2-year grace period to get back up to 8, which is the minimum requirement. And so the decision for a long time was either, can you join a conference or can you backfill to keep it alive? And ultimately, they're going with the backfill to keep it alive by adding the 4 Mountain West schools, at least 4. There could be more. This only gets them to 6. They need to get to at least 8. They may go up to 10. And so the Pac-12 look like it's going to survive and keep going. The Mountain West's future will now be up in the air. There's going to be potentially some big Group of 5 realignment that comes out of that involving the Mountain West and whatnot. So those 2 schools, Oregon State and Washington State, felt like the Pac-12 brand, which is 108 years old, the assets that they have, the war chest that was left over with money, that was enough to rebuild as opposed to just going and joining the Mountain West. Instead, they're taking the top from the Mountain West. That's the first step. Now they have to do some more.
Chris, I think for me, this didn't really hit like a lot of the other realignment moves. I mean, you think about the shockers that we have seen, 15-something years ago, Nebraska and A&M, those were kind of cold and kind of slow drips. Texas and Oklahoma, shocker. But I think when you look at the Pac-2, sort of trying to stay alive, it seemed to me that it was always going to go in this direction. You have that Pac-12 branding, which I think there's real value in that. The war chest, obviously, there's a huge value in that. We'll see if the Mountain West disintegrates, they can get out of some of those exit fees. But it seems like you want to keep the branding. You want to stay together. You want to figure out where that cutoff is at the Mountain West of the teams that are going to provide you some value and keep the Pac-12 alive. But I think why now and why was that cutoff kind of where it was in your mind?
So as for those 4, essentially they feel like joining the Pac-12 and rebuilding a smaller league will bring them more value than a reverse merger of turning the Mountain West into 14 schools. Essentially, they felt like cutting the dead weight of the bottom of the Mountain West Conference was the best financial move for them. And you can throw a Pac-12 logo on there and feel better about it as well. So those are the 4. There may be more. It is a very expensive move. The exit fee for the 4 schools is about $17-18 million each. On top of that, Oregon State and Washington State will owe about $43 million to the Mountain West for taking those schools. Because remember, these conferences signed an agreement last year, football scheduling agreement for 2024. It hasn't even started yet. But as part of that, they were going to have good faith discussions about potentially merging. Those talks never really got going. And the 2025 schedule talks fell apart. And when I was in Las Vegas in the summer for media days, the sense from both sides was that this relationship between the Mountain West and Pac-12 is not good right now. They're very far apart on money, and the money that the Pac-12 would give the Mountain West to schedule more games. And ultimately, the Pac-12 said, no, we're just going to take some of your schools instead. And everybody is kind of reacting from there as to why it happened pretty quickly, because that deadline was September 1st, about 2 weeks ago, for the 2025 schedule. Didn't come together. And so over the last week, this happened really quickly. And now everybody else is kind of figuring out the next steps.
Yeah, so Chris, I actually have a question. From your perspective, what do you think this does for teams like Cal and Stanford, right? Because they just joined the ACC, and now kind of with the realignment concerns, questions they're talking about the ACC regarding Clemson, like how do you see that working out? And, how does this realignment, how does this move affect those 2 teams?
Yeah, that's the question. What happens next? What are the next schools? And you would start with Cal and Stanford, right? They're right there. They're in the area. They just left. Maybe they don't like being in the ACC. Do you try them? I think it's very unlikely Cal and Stanford will join this Pac-12 for a few reasons. One, they're in the ACC, and as Florida State and Clemson have shown, it's extremely difficult to get out of the ACC. Just even if they wanted to. We don't know that they want to, first of all. They like being associated with Duke and North Carolina and Wake Forest and all these really good schools. They may not want to, but even if they wanted to, it would be hard. The ACC also is not going to want to let them go because the ACC needs to be at least 15 members in case Florida State and Clemson leave. That's part of the reason they backfilled, to prepare for that. Also, if you let them leave, that just opens the door and sets a precedent for Florida State and Clemson to leave. So there's no incentive for anybody in the ACC to let them go. Cal and Stanford may not be able to get out. They may not want to get out. So where do you go next? It's probably going to be a collection of group of 5 teams. I do not expect FCS teams to be a part of this. So the possibilities include UNLV, Wyoming, New Mexico, Air Force. You could look at the American and go Tulane, North Texas, UTSA, South Florida, Memphis. Those are the possibilities. And if you're Air Force right now, you're wondering, hey, is it better to try to join this Pac-12 or is it better to try to join the American where Navy and Army are? So there's going to be some kind of tugging here for what's left of the Mountain West and what they do with it. And I think the other potential is Gonzaga. Keep an eye on Gonzaga. Maybe they join as a non-football member to this new Pac-12 as well. So I think if you're the Pac-12, you're looking at adding 2 to 4 schools in terms of what they do next.
Chris, I got to say, as somebody who always roots for the funniest outcome possible, Cal and Stanford being in the ACC and South Florida being in the Pac-12 would be incredible. I suspect I know the answer to this question, Chris, but it's worth asking. The Pac-12 or 2-Pac as we currently sit for the 2024 season does not have an automatic bid into the playoff. Their conference champion is not included in that. What % chance do you feel like this new version of the 6-Pac, future Pac-12 will have one of those 4 buys or 5th buy?
Well, I do not expect this new Pac-12 to get autonomous status or to get an automatic bid to the playoff. We have 5 + 7, 5 automatic bids for the 5 highest conference champions. I do not see the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Power 4 saying, yeah, let's open up another spot so a second G5-ish conference could get in. It's essentially what this new Pac-12 is. It's going to be mostly a G5 conference. Maybe it's a G6, depending on if the Mountain West is able to hold together and potentially add some more schools. So no, I don't expect there to be an additional spot in the CFP, whatever it is. I mean, it could expand to 14 teams by 2026 for all we know. But there is a look in the contract in 2027 for the money and how that's distributed. And so they're probably hoping, hey, can we get some extra money? Can we convince that we can get some extra money out of that next CFP deal? But no, this is not going to be a power conference. This is not going to be an autonomous conference. That's not the focus. The focus was first simply surviving as a conference and then trying to build something that could be maybe that best conference to get that 5th spot, to battle with the American for the top group of 5, leftover spot in what that is.